You know what time it is? Gotcha! Yes! We're back! We're back with another installment of Storytime with Chris. As I always say, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You are more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max, relaxing, chillaxing, sleepy time, in between time, me time, scheme time, study time, break time, CP time. Anytime that you want to hear a highly animated voice bring you wonderful stories of magic, fantasy, science fiction, adventure, music, and many, many more in between. I have to grab the remote because I want our music to be a bit more loud, which is brought to you by Mr. Ambiance. I don't own the rights to this music, but give a love to Mr. Ambiance on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, and do all those wonderful YouTube things. Be right back. Hold on. Because I'm short and I can't reach the other way. Okay, all right. Okay, it's side of the left. Oh! Oh, gracious. Alrighty. Okay, we are back. Let me explain a couple of things. I know that I said we are going to start our newest book on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which we are. I'll make an announcement later today about when that's going to be, because I'm going to read 2 chapters tomorrow evening for our new book, which is Bruce Colville's The Unicorn Chronicles, and we're reading the first book in that series called Into the Land of the Unicorns. Bruce Colville is one of my favorite authors of all time, and it's because of his books that I am a voracious reader, a lover of fantasy, a lover of just writing that does not talk down to you, but is easily digestible for someone who is young, and just as mature for someone who is much older. A couple of books that I immediately could think of would be Song of the Wanderer, The Monster's Ring, The Skull of Truth, which is one of my favorite magic shop books. So there's Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher, Jennifer Murley's Toad. Just amazing stories. And Bruce Colville was one of the first, outside of like a production company that would do audio dramas. Bruce Colville's Words on the Wing company was the first audiobook franchise where they had live actors performing the characters on the page. So like the author is reading the narrative of the book, but when the dialogue comes up, there's a distinctive actor, voice actor for each character. And so he's the reason why The Dragon Slayers is one of my favorite musicals and something I definitely want to produce one day. I have the original soundtrack in my room. Bruce Colville, if you ever see this, I love you. Thank you for all of the magic that you bring. Thank you for your inclusivity. Thank you for your support of LGBT youth. Thank you for your support of literature. And thank you for your support of imagination. So, appreciate you so much. Yeah. Actually, The Skull of Truth is one of my favorite magic shop books. The other one being Jeremy Thatcher, Dragon Hatcher. But we'll talk about that another day. Actually, we might get to read that book. And of course, I'll give credit where credit is due. But without further ado, we're going to get back where we left off. Finally, Will has found the golden harp. And he has met the 3 lords protected by the high magic. We got Merriman, we got a Lord of the Dark, and we got this third person who is yet to really be revealed, but I kind of have a sneaking suspicion as to who it is. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 7, Eyes That See the Wind. There we go. They stood silent in the dim-lit darkness. Somewhere out beyond the rock, thunder still rumbled and growled. The torches burned, flickering and smoking on the walls. Brand said huskily, "Was he the No, Merriman said, he is not the Grey King, but he is one very close to him, and back to him he is now gone, and their rage will mount the higher because it will be sharpened by fear, fear at what the light may be able to do with this new thing of power. He looked at Will, his bony face tight with concern. The first perilous part of the quest is accomplished, Old One, but there is worse peril yet to come. The sleepers must be wakened, Will said. That is right, and although we do not know yet where they sleep, nor shall till you have found them, it is almost certain that they are terribly dangerously close to the Grey King. For long we have known there was reason for his hard, cold grip on this part of the land, though we do not understand it. A happy village this has always been, and beautiful, yet he chose to make his kingdom here instead of in some grim, remote place of the kind chosen by most of his line. Now it is clear that can be only one reason for that, to be close to the place where the sleepers lie, and to keep their resting place within his power, just as this great rock, Caer Averden, is still within his power. Will said, his round face grave, the spell of protection by which we came here untouched has run its course now, and it can be made only once. He looked ruefully at Bran. We have an interesting reception out there when we leave this place. Have no care, Old One. You will have a new protection with you now. The words came deep and gentle from the top of the hall. Turning, Will saw that the bearded lord, his robe blue as the summer sea, was sitting enthroned again in the shadows. As he spoke, it seemed that the light began gradually to grow in the hall. The torches burned higher, and glimmering between them now, Will could see long swords hanging on the stone. The music of the golden harp, said the blue-robed lord, has a power that may not be broken either by the dark or by the light. It is the high magic in it, and while the harp is being played, those under its protection are safe from any kind of harm or spell. Play the harp of gold, Old One. Its music will wrap you in safety. Will said slowly, but by enchantment I could play it, but I think it should rather be played by the art of skillful fingers. I did not know how to play the harp, my lord, he paused, but Bran does. Bran looked down at the instrument as Will held it out to him. Never a harp like that, though, he said. He took the harp from Will. Its frame was slender but ornate, fashioned so that a golden vine with gold leaves and flowers seemed to twine round it, in and out of the strings. Even the strings themselves looked as though they were made of gold. Play, Bran, said the bearded lord softly. Holding the harp experimentally in the crook of his left arm, Bran ran his fingers gently over the strings, and the sounds that came from them were of such sweetness that Will beside him caught his breath in astonishment. Matter of fact, hold on, let's switch up gears for a second. Because if we're going to be talking about harp playing and harp music, we need harp music. And I know just the person to make that happen. Just give me a moment, because I'm going to find it in just a second, because I just happened to... Haha, there it is. And the sounds that came from them were of such sweetness that Will beside him caught his breath in astonishment. He had never heard notes at once so delicate and so resonant fill the hall with music like the liquid birdsong of summer. Intent, fascinated, Bran began to pick out the plaintive notes of an old Welsh lullaby, elaborating it gradually, filling it out as it gained confidence in the feel of the strings under his one hand. Will watched the absorbed musician's devotion on his face. Glancing for an instant at the enthroned lord and at Merriman, he knew that they too were at this moment rapt, carried away all out of time by a music that was not of the earth, pouring out like the high magic in a singing spell. Carl made no sound but leaned his head against Bran's knee. Merriman said, his deep voice soft over the music, "Go now, Old One." His shadowed, deep-set eyes met Will's briefly in a fierce communication of trust and hope. Will stared about him for a last moment at the high torchlit hall, with its one dark-robed figure standing tall as a tree and the unknown bearded lord seated motionless on his throne. Then he turned and led Bran, his fingers still gently plucking a melody. from the harp towards the narrow stone staircase to the chamber from which they had come. When he had set him climbing, he turned to raise one arm in salute, then followed. Bran stood in the stone room above, playing, while Caval and Will came up after him, and as he played, there took shape in the blank wall at the end of the chamber, below the single hanging golden shield, the two great doors through which they had come into the heart of Bird Rock. The music of the harp rippled into a lilting upward scale, and slowly the doors swung inward. Beyond, they saw the gray clouding sky between the steep walls of the cleft of rock. Though fire blazed no longer on the mountain, a strong, dead smell of burning hung in the air. As they stepped outside, Caval bounded out past them through the cleft and disappeared. Struck suddenly by a fear of losing him again, Bran stopped playing. "Caval! Caval!" he called. "Look," Will said softly. He was half-turned, looking back. Behind them, the tall slabs of rock swung silently together and seemed to melt out of existence, leaving only a weathered rock face, looking just as it had looked for thousands of years, and in the air hung a faint, vanishing phrase of delicate music. But Bran was thinking only of Caval. After one brief glance at the rock, he tucked the harp beneath his arm and dived for the opening through which the dog had disappeared. Before he could reach it, a whirling flurry of white came hurling in upon them through a cloud of fine ash, snarling, kicking, knocking Bran sideways so hard that he almost dropped the harp. It was Caval, but a mad, furious, transformed Caval, growling at them, glaring, driving them deeper into the cleft as if they were enemies. In a moment or two, he had them pinned, astounded against the rocky wall, was crouching before them with his long side teeth bared in a cold snarl. "What is it?" said Bran blankly when he had breathed breath enough to speak. "Caval, what on earth?" And in an instant they knew, or would have known if they had had time still for wondering, for suddenly the whole world around them was a roaring flurry of noise and destruction. Broken, charred branches came whirling past over the top of the rocky cleft. Stones came bounding down loose out of nowhere, so that instinctively they ducked, covering their heads. They fell flat on the rock, pressing themselves into the angle between earth and rock, with Caval close behind. All around, the wind howled and tore at the rock with a sound like a high, mad human scream, amplified beyond belief. It was as if all the air and wails had funneled down into a great tornado of tearing destruction and was battering in a frenzy of frustrated rage at the narrow opening in whose shelter they had desperately crouched. Will lurched up on his hands and knees. He groped with one hand until he clutched Bran's arm. "The harp!" he croaked. "Play the harp!" Bran blinked at him, dazed by the noise overhead, and then he understood. Forcing himself against the fearsome wind pressing in between the rocky walls, he gripped the golden harp against his side and ran his right hand tremulously over the strings. And at once the tumult grew less. Bran began to play, and as the sweet notes poured out like the song of a lark rising, the great wind died away into nothing. Outside, there was only the rattle of loose pebbles tumbling here and there, one by one, down the rock. For a moment, a lone sunbeam slanted down and glinted on the gold of the harp. Then it was gone, and the sky seemed duller, the world more gray. Caval scrambled to his feet, licked Bran's hand, and then led them docilely out to the slope outside the narrow cleft that had sheltered them from the flurry of the gale. They felt a soft rain began to fall, so Caval was like going on the attack or giving that impression because he was trying to keep them out of harm's way. Because let me tell you something, animals will know when danger is coming before humans do. It's not a lot of humans that have such a sixth sense of an awareness to be able to pick up on something coming out of nowhere. So the fact that he ran out first and then came trotting back and like forced them up against the wall, because that's how they would have been protected from the flying trees and debris and rocks and whatnot. So shout out to the good dog. Dogs are amazing, just like cats. Cats are also amazing. Actually, all animals are amazing if you actually take the time to take care of them and love them and give them a space where they can actually thrive. All animals are amazing. No animal is cruel for the sake of being cruel. They just do what they do instinctually. In the words of a father character in Jeremy Thatcher's Dragon Hatcher, you can't blame a cat for being a cat. Can't blame a dog for being a dog. Bran left his fingers wander idly but persistently over the strings of the harp. He had no intention of stopping again. He looked at Will and shook his head mutely with wonder and remorse and inquiry all in one. Will squatted down and took Caval's muscle between his hands. He shook the dog's head gently from side to side. Caval, he said, wonderingly. Over his shoulders, he said to Bran, Guit tried en mjörn. Guit tried ven mjörn. Is that how you say it? In all its ancient force, the Grey King set his north wind upon us, the wind that blows around the feet of the dead, and with the dead is where we should have been if it were for Caval, blasted away into a time beyond tomorrow. Before we could have seen a single tree bending, it would have been on us, for it came down from very high up, and no human sighted eye could have seen it. But this hound of yours is the dog with the silver eyes, and such dogs can see the wind. So he saw it, and knew what it would do, and drove us back into safety. Brad said guiltily, If I hadn't stopped playing, perhaps the Brendan Lewis could have sent the wind. Couldn't have sent the wind. The magic of the harp would have stopped him. Perhaps, Will said, and perhaps not. He gave Caval's head one last rub and straightened up. The white sheepdog looked up at Brad, tongue lolling as if in a grin, and Brad said to him lovingly, Rud tinid gifta. Good boy. But still his fingers did not stop moving over the harp. Slowly they scrambled down the rock. Though it was full morning now, the sky was no lighter, but gray and heavy with cloud. The rain was still light, but it was clear that it would grow and settle in for the day, and that the valley was safe now from any more threat of fire. All the near slope of the mountain, Bird Rock and the valley edge were blackened with charred, and here there were wisps of smoke still rose, but all sparks were drowned now, and the ashes cold and wet, and the green farmlands would not again this year be in any state for burning. Bran said, Did the harp bring the rain? I think so, Will said. I'm just hoping it will bring nothing else. That's the trouble with the high magic. Like talking in the old speech. It's a protection, and yet it marks you, makes you easier to find. We'll be in the valley soon. But as he spoke, Bran's foot slipped on a wet rock face and he stumbled sideways, grabbing at a bush to save himself from falling, and dropped the harp. In the instant that the music broke off, Caval's head jerked up and began barking furiously in a mixture of rage and challenge. He jumped up to a projecting rock and stood poised there, staring about him. Then suddenly the barking broke into a furious deep yowl, like the baying of a hunting dog, and he leapt. The great gray fox, king of the Milgwyn, swerved in midair and screamed like a vixen. In a headlong rush down Bird Rock he had sprung out from above, aiming straight for Bran's head and neck, but the shock of Caval's fierce leap turned his balance just enough to send him spinning sideways, cartwheeling down the rock. He screamed again, an unnatural sound that made the boys flinch in horror, and he did not stop himself to turn at bay, but rushed in on a frenzy down the mountain. In an instant, Caval, barking in joyous triumph, was tearing down after him, and Will, up on the empty rock under the gray drizzling sky, was instantly filled with a presentiment of disaster so overpowering that without thought he reached out and seized the golden harp and crawled to Bran. Stop, Caval! Stop him! Stop him! Bran gave him one frightened look, then he flung himself after Caval, running, stumbling, desperately calling the dog back. Scrambling down from the rock with the harp under one arm, Will saw his white head moving fast over the nearest field and beyond it, a blur of speed that he knew was Caval pursuing the gray fox. His head dizzy with foreboding, he too ran. Still on high land, he could see 2 fields away the roofs of Coraddoc Pritchard's farm, and nearby a gray-white knot of sheep and the figures of men. He skidded to a halt suddenly. The harp! There was no means of explaining the harp if anyone could see it. He was certain to be among men in a few moments. The harp must be hidden. But where? He looked wildly about him. The fire had not touched this field. On the far side of the field he saw a small lean-to, no more than 3 stones away, a slate roof, and there was an open shelter for sheep in wintertime, or a store place for winter feed. It was filled with bales of hay already newly stacked. Running to it, Will thrust the gleaming little harp between 2 bales of hay so that it was completely invisible from the outside. Then standing back, he stretched out one hand in the old speech, put upon the harp the spell of Cer Caradog, by the power of which only the song of an old one will be able to take the harp out of that place or even make it visible at all. Then he reached away over the field towards Pritchard's farm, where distant shouts marked the ending of the chase. He could see in a meadow beyond the farm buildings a huge gray fox swerving and leaping in an effort to shake Cavall from his heels, and Cavall running doggedly close. A madness seemed to be on the fox. White foam dripped from its jaws. Will stumbled breathless into the farmyard to find Bran struggling to make his way through a group of men and sheep at the gate. John Rowlands was there, and Owen Davis and Will's uncle. Their clothes and weary faces were still blackened with ash from the firefighting, and Caradoc Pritchard stood scowling from his gun cocked under his arm. "That dang dog has gone mad!" Pritchard growled. "Cavall! Cavall!" Bran pushed his way wildly through into the field, scattering the sheep, paying no heed to anyone. Pritchard snarled at him, and Owen Davis said sharply, "Bran, where have you been? What are you up to?" The gray fox leapt high in the air as if they had seen it do once before in Bird Rock. Cavall leapt after it, snapping at it in midair. "The dog is mad," David Evans said unhappily. "He will be on the sheep." "He's just so determined to get that fox." Bran's voice was high with anguish. "Cavall! Trudima! Leave it!" Will's uncle looked at Bran as if he could not believe what he had heard. Then he looked down at Will. He said, puzzled, "What fox?" Horror exploded in Will's brain as suddenly he understood, and he cried out, but it was too late. The great fox in the field swung about and came leaping straight at them, with Cavall at his heels, and at the last moment it curved sideways and leapt at one of the sheep that now milled terrified round the gate and sank its teeth into the woolly throat. The sheep screamed. Cavall sprang at the fox. 20 yards away, Caradoc Pritchard let out a furious shout, lifted his gun, and shot Cavall full in the chest. "Cavall!" Bran's cry of loving horror struck at Will, so that for a second he closed his eyes in pain. He knew that the grief in it would ring in his ears forever. The gray fox stood waiting for Will to look at it, grinning, red tongue lolling from a mouth dripping brighter with red blood. It stared straight at him with unmistakable sneering snarl. Then it loped off across the field straight as an arrow and disappeared over the far hedge. Bran was on his knees by the dog, sobbing, cradling the white head on his lap. He called desperately to Cavall, fondling his ears, dropping his cheek just once, and longing to rest against the smooth neck, but there was nothing to be done. The chest was a shattered ruin. The silver eyes were glazing, unblinking. Cavall was dead. "Murdering bloody dog!" Pritchard was babbling with fury, still in a kind of savage contentment. "He'll kill no more of my sheep. A dang good riddance." "He was just after the fox. He was just trying to save your old sheep." Bran choked on his words and wept. "What are you talking about? A fox? Boy, you are as mad as a dog." Pritchard broke the shell out of his gun, his pudgy face contemptuous. Owen Davis was down on his knees beside Bran. "Come, Butchkin," he said, his voice gentle. "There was no fox anywhere. Cavall was going for the sheep. There was no question. We all saw. He was a lovely dog, a beauty." His voice shook, and he cleared his throat. "But he must have gone bad in the head. I cannot say that I would not have shot him myself in Caradoc's place. That is the right of it. Once a dog turns killer, it's the only thing to do." His arm was tied around Bran's shoulders. Bran looked up at the rest of them, blindly tugging off his glasses and rubbing a hand over his eyes. He said, high, incredulous, "But did none of you see the fox? The big grey fox that Cavall jumped as it went to kill the sheep?" John Rowland said, his voice deep and compassionate, "No, Bran." "There was no fox, Bran," Dave Evans said. "I'm sorry, boy buck. Come on now, let your father take you to Clivet. He will bring Cavall after you." "Ah," said Pritchard with a sniff, "you can get that carrion out of my yard as soon as you like, yes? And pay the vet's bill when I have had that sheep seen to as well." "Cardiac, Cradoc Pritchard," said Will's uncle sharply. "There will be talk of all this sheep attacking business later. You can have a little feeling for the boy, surely." Caradoc Pritchard looked at him, his small eyes bright and expressionless. He motioned to one of his men to take the wounded sheep away. Then he spat casually on the ground and walked off to his farmhouse. A woman was standing there in the doorway. She had not moved through everything that had happened. Bran's father helped him to his feet and led him away. Bran seemed dazed. He looked at Will blankly as if he had not been there. David Evans said glumly, "Wait a minute. There's some sacking in the car. I will come and find it." John Rowland stood beside Will in the fine rain, sucking at an empty pipe, looking reflectively down at the still white body with the dreadful red gash at his chest. He said, "And did you see this fox, Will Stanton?" "Yes," Will said. "Of course. It was in front of us as clear as you are now. It had tried to attack us on Bird Rock and Kaval chased it down. But none of you could see it, so nobody will ever believe us, will they?" John Rowlands was silent for a moment, his creased brown face unreadable. Then he said, "Sometimes in these mountains there are things it is very hard to believe, even when you have seen them with your own eyes. For instance, there is Kaval. With our eyes, we saw no alone jump at that sheep. And indeed, something did sink its teeth into the sheep's throat, and must have got a bloody mouth doing it. But there was blood all over the sheep's fleece, and it is lucky to be alive. And yet it is a strange thing which will not go out of my mind, that although the poor Kaval lies there with his own blood all over his broken chest, there is no blood in his mouth at all." That is the end of part 1 of The Grey King. And I told y'all, I tried to prep y'all for this. Something bad was going to happen that was going to be very sad. And there's Bran with the golden heart. There he is. I don't condone violence, whether it be for humans or animals. But obviously, if you're doing what you can to defend yourself from something that is attacking you, you have every right to do so. And sometimes things happen that are outside of our control, but one would have the onus to think that if he did bite the sheep, that there would have been blood on his mouth, and there was none. And the life of an innocent creature has thus been taken away because of a misunderstanding. It's one of the reasons why I've only seen Disney's Old Yeller one time. One time only. Because all it took was one time. I've not watched that movie since I was I'm talking kid, like 7 or 8 years old. Because unfortunately in that story, and I probably will never read that story for Storytime because it breaks my heart. Even though I want to read a story like The Yearling, which is another heartbreaking story. What happened in Old Yeller was that he ended up defending the family. There was a rabid animal on the farm. The dog ended up getting rabies, and so the mother was going to go out and shoot the dog because back in the day, and this is well before the advancements of modern medicine were really a thing. This is like, I'd say 1900s, maybe 1910s America. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But the main character, he said, "No, Ma, he's my dog." And he goes out, and they made a little pit so that he couldn't get out and attack anybody because he's rabid. And as he is holding the gun, he just shoots him. He said, "I love you. I'll always love you." And it's such a heartbreaking story. Oh my gosh. It's why I have a vehement defense against people who have such negativity against pit bulls. Pit bulls are not inherently bad for children. They're actually considered nanny dogs, like that of a Saint Bernard or a bulldog or other variations of pit bulls. But it's the way that media and bad owners have demonized the breed as a whole. It's not fair. It's really not fair. I've had plenty of family members have pit bulls, and none of them have ever bitten a kid or attacked somebody unwarranted. An animal doesn't just attack unceremoniously. A lot of what they do is based off of instinct. And now this little boy has to move through life without his best friend. And that's sad. That's But take a breath, make a wish, count to 3, take some time to decompress. Because this story is far from over. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.